Welcome to another episode of Flutter Original. This time it's kind of in October, or we are approaching October. If you're watching this video later, so don't worry, but we published this video initially in October. So I thought that maybe I should have a different guest this time and talking about contribution, specifically contributing to Flutter repository. And I have one of the most prolific, well known person, which I had also a privilege to meet him in person recently. A very nice person, and I think he's even more. He has contributed to Flutter repository more than even the bot. So let me welcome Taha. Hi Taha, how's it going?
Hi, Majid. Thanks for having me. It's a privilege. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk about Flutter contribution with you and with the community.
Taha, it's nice to have you on this show. Correct me if I was wrong. So you have contributed more than Flutterbot in the repository. Am I correct?
Some bots, yeah.
Some bots, of course. Yeah, that's nice. But Tao, I think a lot of people probably don't know you, or maybe have seen your face in Flutter repository issues and like PRs that you made. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us, like, how did you get into this world of contributing to Flutter?
Yeah, my name is Taha. I go by Taha Tesser on Twitter and LinkedIn. I started my journey from Flutter 1.0. Like when Flutter 1.0 was announced, I watched that event. I watched the other product that were announced together, like Rive. Like Rive was announced, Code Magic was announced at that time, and I talked to my friend and I said, it is really exciting to develop an app in a short amount of time. And we were really discussing something doing together in a project, and he challenged me to create an app in 10 days, and I said, that's crazy, how is that possible? you know and I made an app in 7 days using Flutter, and it was a card application. It was fetching some API, and I was really surprised, and I was really uh, like shocked that you could make an app within 7 days. It was not like something that I have done before. With Flutter, it was possible, and the amount of resources Flutter had, even back in 2018, was tremendous. Like I found Flutter samples, documentation. I found articles, people writing. Like especially, I am from India, so there were a lot of writers writing from India as well, and I was really surprised the amount of attraction Flutter was getting. And a couple of years later, I got a job at Code Magic, and I started working at Code Magic. We were triaging Flutter issues, and my job involved looking at Flutter issues on a daily basis and verify the issues are valid, if they're reproducible on different channels. At the time, we had four Flutter channels: stable, beta, dev, and master. And my job involved testing those issues and apply label. And I was really surprised that in a couple of years from learning about Flutter, I was actually testing Flutter issues on a daily basis. And I got an opportunity to work with a tremendous team. We had like passionate team members in our team who not only care about the quality of the issues, but also really curious on how to investigate those issues, find how we can help the community and the Flutter team members who are trying to fix. And while triaging Flutter issues, I have noticed like there are some issues where I could probably do something. I could probably fix them. You know? And I found this one issue. Particular day, like it was a new Android Studio release, and whenever we have new Xcode release, Android Studio release, we run Flutter and we see people filing issues. And some people say, "Oh, like there is this new version of Android Studio, and it does not detect it doesn't get detected by Flutter Doctor." And I am one of those people who is obsessed with Flutter Doctor checks. Like I like seeing those checks, and I always used to have all those checks. I used to have Mac OS, Windows, Linux, and I used to make sure that I have those checks on every platform. Install Xcode, install Android Studio, install Visual Studio, and I was thinking this particular issue is about Android Studio. It's a new release. There must be some source where, and keep in mind, like I don't know how this works yet at this point. And I was trying to figure out, okay, there must be some way Flutter is detecting this new version of Android Studio, and it's failing at that. And I thought, okay, let me locate the source of this problem. I first thought, okay, let me check the previous version of Android Studio and try to compare what's happening with this new version of Android Studio. Why Flutter Doctor was able to detect the previous version, but not the new version. So there must be something that has changed in this Android Studio release. It can't be Flutter Doctor, because it was detecting just fine. I installed the previous version of Android Studio, and I compare the directories within the Android Studio installation, and I found out there are some changes. There are some directory renames. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. If I am renaming it, or if the Google has, or the JetBrains team has renamed some folders, Flutter Doctor does not know about those changes. Then I was like, okay, let me also see if it is also happening on Mac or Linux, if those changes are also similar, but they're not. And then I confirm, okay, I need to fix it only for Windows, not for other platforms. So that eliminates other possibilities, and that makes me focus more on the actual problem instead of worrying about, okay, maybe it's not fixed on Mac OS. So now I knew, okay, I need to fix it on Mac or Windows. I knew that there are some changes made by JetBrains team or the Android Studio team, and Flutter Doctor does not know about these changes. I went inside the source code and I searched for the keyword Android Studio, and if there are some mentions, I could probably locate where Android Studio is being detected. And I found out, instead of framework, there is a new package inside the SDK. It's called Flutter Tools. And in Flutter Tools, there are all kinds of folders for Android Studio, for Visual Studio, for all kinds of tools that Flutter relies on. And there was a class called Android Studio.dot, Android Studio underscore Studio.dot. I was like, that is really helpful. I know something is happening here. And after looking into this class, I found out that Flutter is actually detecting the directory, detecting a file. There is an XML file that contains Android Studio version. There is a minor version, there is a major version, and it's detecting the Android Studio stable and all those stuff. And I found out that there is also the same class is also doing the detection for Mac OS and Linux. So I knew I am in the right place. But I want to confirm, just by doing something to this class, I want to confirm I am in the right place. And it's actually the class where I have to figure out and figure out the solution for this bug. I thought, let's try something funny. What I did, when the Android Studio could not detect, it throws an error. And I was like, okay, let me modify that error message to put some exclamation points at the end. And if I run Flutter Doctor, I should be able to see that error message with some exclamation at the end. That will verify me I am in the right place, in the right source. I found the source of this error message. It's located in a file with all the error messages in the Flutter tool system. I added exclamation points. Then I run Flutter Doctor. Nothing happened. I don't see the exclamation point. And I was surprised, like, why? I literally edited the message. It should show me the exclamation point. I went ahead and I renamed the whole error message to something else. And I ran Flutter Doctor again. Nothing happened. I'm like, why? So part of this process involved like investigating. So I thought, okay, let me try to change Flutter version, change a commit, change to something else. So Flutter builds itself. And you see this when you run Flutter upgrade or Flutter downgrade. You see a bunch of messages popping up like building tool, building this, and then it will download several packages. So I thought, okay, let me change the version and run this command again. So it will build itself. And it did. It worked. I see a random error message instead of the actual one. I was like, okay, it is working. So, but I can't be changing the version all the time just to see if something is changing or not. Then I was like, okay, let me delete cache. Maybe the deleting cache would be able to, like, I will be able to verify what I'm changing in the tools. I found there is a cache folder, helpfully, and then I delete that folder and run Flutter Doctor again. But doing this way, everything is rebuilding. Like Flutter Tool is rebuilding. It's generating packages again, and it's taking me several minutes just to test tiny change. I'm like, I can't be just running this command and waiting for 20 minutes, you know? And there should be a smarter way to do this. Then in the cache folder, I looked up what files exist there. There is a file called Flutter Tool Snapshot, and it's 35 MB. And I was like, okay, let me just only delete this file, not the whole cache. I delete this file. It's a snapshot of the Flutter tool. It's pretty self-explanatory. And I run Flutter Doctor. I can see those changes in few seconds instead of waiting for 20 minutes. So that eliminated the part where I could investigate the issue, find the source, verify if I'm in the right place or not. And then I was like, let me think about the solution now. So what is wrong here? I looked up the Flutter team, not Flutter team, Android Studio team has renamed some folder. Like, I need to verify this Android Studio version using the new type of folder name, right? And it has some conditions where it's looking for a particular folder. I added another condition and I said, if this version matched this version, look for this folder, not the previous one. And when that condition is met, Android Studio is able to detect Android Studio. Flutter Doctor is able to detect Android Studio. And now I was like, okay, let me file this PR, but wait a second, I need to test this. I need to test this because when you're working in the Flutter repository, when you're browsing any Flutter PR, you see, okay, does it have a test? There is literally a checkbox that asks you, when you file in your PR, it asks you, add a test. And when you tick that box, you're saying that, yes, I added a test for this change. And I was like, okay, let me look for the test file for this class. It's helpfully called Android Studio test.dot. And I look up into the existing test. When you're looking at existing test, you can learn a lot about the repository about the SDK, how the existing tests are written. And if the previous version was working, it must have been tested. So all I have to do is I have to find how it was tested for the previous version of Android Studio. I found a test where it's testing for the previous version of Android Studio, and I simply duplicated it. And I duplicated the test, and I renamed the version number. I don't have to do anything else. I just have to rename the duplicated test for the new version. And I was like, okay, it is working. But how do I verify that this test is actually correct? So I went back into source code where I fixed the bug. I commented my fix. I ran the test again. It failed. So that tells me this is really important for beginners. Like when they're writing tests for a fix, you should verify that it's actually verifying the bug fix, and it should fail before you make that fix, because that's how we can verify that the test actually is being tested. The fix is actually being tested. And I uncommented the fix. I ran the test again, and it passed. So that tells me my fix is actually working. And then I filed a PR. It was at the end of the day, I filed a PR. Within 20 minutes, somebody in the Flutter team verifies it, and they approved it, and they merged the PR. And I was surprised. I was like, wow, so I did everything right then. Because if I didn't do anything right, they would have told me.
Yeah,
and because it was one of my first PRs, I was a little bit skeptical if I'm doing everything right or not. And that happens to everyone when you're doing something new for the first time. And after it was merged, I wait for a day because it takes time for the master branch to roll into a new version. Next day, when I run Flutter Doctor on the master branch, it is detecting Android Studio. I was really happy, and I shared with all of my friends that if you use the new Android Studio, your Flutter Doctor will detect Android Studio thanks to me.
Really, thanks to you. I mean, this is fascinating story. It reminds me, this was your first PR, right? in on at least on Flutter repository. You brought up. I was actually listening to you, and I was just thinking, wow, this is a very nice journey for those who are doing for the first time a PR on any repository. I had similar issues. One of the things that usually comes up for the first PR or maybe second, like the first few PRs, let's say, is the imposter syndrome. Am I doing
Yeah.
this correct? Am I like writing this correct? Is this test correct? Should I send a PR? What if I send this PR and I get embarrassed because I did something wrong? And now the story that you said, it just proves that nothing is wrong. I mean, the worst case scenario is someone is coming and comments under your PR, and it actually is. If that happens, it actually is good because then you learned from someone who knows better than you about that repository, and then just imagine over time how many PRs, how many comments that you can read and learn, and then over time how many you will learn, how much you will learn more. And this is actually fascinating. But that let's ask one question then. um, I think this is back to maybe 3 4 years ago, the story that you mentioned. And after that, you started sending more and more and more PRs, and you are right now one of the probably top, I don't know, top 10 maybe contributed to Flutter repository. And that's fascinating, of course. And I guess you have a lot of experience, as you mentioned, also right now after the first PR with the repository. I think it's going to be interesting to hear from you as one of the top contributors to one of the biggest, you know, open source projects right now and trending projects, let's say. So Flutter is also like pretty trending on GitHub and among open source projects, right? So let's maybe go through the repository, and I would like to go through like the repository itself, how you're going to set it up, how can you start the first PR. Give me some example, maybe try to onboard us to at least those who have not contributed to Flutter repository, onboard us to this journey of sending PR and helping Flutter to become even better by fixing bugs, adding features, and so on and so on. Are you ready for that?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, maybe we should just pull up our maybe we should just pull up our screen and like let's get it started.
Yeah, let's begin. So first, I want to talk about setting up Flutter. Okay. So I already have Flutter on my system. There is a Flutter folder on my system, and it's not a regular download. Like when you're developing an app, when you have a stable channel, you go to Flutter website, you look up for the Flutter stable SDK, and you download it from here, right? But the thing is that it's not a fork. When you're making changes, you go to the Flutter repository and you fork this repository with your account, and then you clone your own fork. So you can make changes and submit a PR. But typically, developers have a downloaded version. They have this archive that they have downloaded. They can't make those changes to this download, and it's a stable channel, and they might need this stable channel to develop apps and work on projects. So you should not be modifying this version of the Flutter. So go to the Flutter repository and fork it. That's your first biggest step. When you fork it, you're creating an entire clone of the repository to your account. Then you can clone that fork and you can make changes to it. And they are separate from your regular Flutter download. Because I work on Flutter exclusively, I only have the fork on my system. I don't have the regular download. So when you fork the repository, you will you can fork it and then clone it using GitHub CLI or SSH. It's a typical setup. And then after you fork it, Let me go back to my regular installation. So when you fork it, you will see a remote. You will see two remotes, origin and upstream.
Hmm.
So the origin is pointing to your own fork on your GitHub, and the upstream is where is the Flutter repository. So when you make changes, typically you want to be able to have a separate setup that's forked from your account. And then when you make changes, you create new branches into this fork repository. And then when you push it to your own repository, to your fork, you can create a PR from it. But I want to talk about setting up your environment for contribution. You can just open the Flutter repository, and there is a helpful file right down here. You see this file. It's called contributing.md. The Flutter team has put a lot of effort into crafting this file. And I don't remember reading this file when I started, but now I recommend this to everyone. Go to this file. You will have almost everything here. You go to this file, you will find some information here. First, you will information about code of conduct, which is typical, and then scroll down to some technical aspects. Here, you can see developing for Flutter. When you, my focus is on the framework side, so I will talk about the setting up framework development environment, not the engine one. And then there is also a style guide, which are like some beginners are a little bit hesitate to read this file because it's pretty big. You can see, but in this file, you can just bookmark this file and come back to it later in the future. It just act as a reference. You don't have to read every word in this file. And then there's the cool video from the Flutter team. If you can watch this video and understand how to set up the same thing. But we will go to the framework side because we are in the Flutter repository, the framework part of the Flutter SDK. And here you will find information about setting up your Linux environment or Windows. There are some basic things like installing Android Studio tools if you're testing your code on Android Studio, and or Android emulator rather. And then, like I talked about earlier, you fork the repository and you install it to a directory that's not the stable branch. That should be a separate thing. And then it's talking about adding remote. But when you use GitHub CLI, you get this remote automatically. So I recommend using GitHub CLI for this purposes. And you can see like there are some other comments suggested, but you don't need to execute any command that you don't see necessary. So once you clone a repository, I can go ahead just do it right now. I can remove my existing installation just so it is gone, and I can go to my own fork, and I can clone this anytime like this. And that's all you need technically. There are other complex details, but when you want to make a contribution, the cloning is the only part that's like mandatory. All the other things are not super important. I will tell you why. Like when you start contributing, you look into Flutter issues, right? And if you want to contribute, let's just say a documentation, if you found some documentation bug, you can I'm looking for a file. When you're into documentation issue, you don't have to set up Xcode. You don't have to set up Android Studio. You don't have to do any of the other commands. It's simply just editing the source class. So I see a lot of beginners like when they make a fix, they fix a documentation line. So for that, you don't need to do anything beyond this point. You just go to the source class of that documentation and edit that documentation, create a new branch. So I recommend like when you open a new this is currently cloned right now. We just cloned it. And you can see when I use the GitHub CLI to clone it, I have origin and remote already set up like upstream. And here I can create a new branch using Git, or you can also use some sort of GUI. So on a daily basis, GitHub GUI. So on a daily basis, I use this application fork. So it helps me create new branches, and it helps me to like track all the Flutter changes within the commit tree. So if you're working with multiple repositories and you have a lot of commits to track and you're creating several branches, having some sort of GUI for the Git process is really helpful. You can also use GitHub desktop application. I see a lot of beginners using this application, and I recommend this. It's completely free, and you can also do this from the command line. But like I said, like you will be creating like multiple branches, and you have to rebase the branch, and I'll talk about that. So that's it. When you run this, you can go into next steps. Here, things change depending on where you want to fix an issue. As a beginner, I recommend that you start with examples. There are several examples in the repository. There is a examples folder and then API. In this application, there are API examples for all kinds of widgets. From material, you can browse Cupertino, and some people are into material widgets like me, and some people are into Cupertino widget. So you can start running these examples, and they're running from the source code. So you can find details on how to run these examples here. And you're not browsing. These are the same examples that you see on the Flutter website. This is a drawer documentation, and you see when you scroll down, you will see an example here. This is a code snippet for a drawer. You can find the same thing in the source class. So if you see something wrong here, you can edit the source class and it will be updated here. And then there are also .py examples, not in this class. Let me search for something else. Here you will see a .py example. And it says sample material appbar.mysample. So you copy this command and create this sample. But when you're contributing, you have the source code. You can edit the source code of this example. So here, first you see this is the material widget, and then it's the appbar class. So you can go to the source. Let me go back to the examples. You can go back to the examples. In the API documentation, you locate material, and then appbar. That's it. So all the examples related to appbar are located here. And this example exists here in one of those examples. And when you make changes, let's pick this one. When you make changes to this example, and when you submit a PR, once it's merged, it will be live on the API documentation website. So we can talk about one example. We can investigate one issue later. So this is an example process, right? And then, okay, if you see some bug, you see like a bug where it's related to some widget. You don't know if it is an issue that's already been filed, or you want to file an issue yourself. So you can look up issue if it exists in the repository. So for this case, I will look up for material. I will look up material design label, and when I use this filter to filter out material issues, I can see all kinds of material issues are already labeled here. So somebody have already filed these issues, and I can browse these issues. I can browse if it is something I want to fix, if it has already been assigned or not. Like I can see myself assigned here, and you can browse if it is a. Oh, let me go back. You can browse if it is a new feature or a bug. Usually the bugs don't have a bug label. This is the bug. You can open the issue. And one of the things I don't see a lot of beginners doing is they don't see if the issue is already linked to a PR. They comment that they want to fix an issue, or they file an issue, they file a PR for that issue, but they don't see if it is linked or not. So make sure when you're putting your time into investigating an issue, make sure if somebody has already been working on it or not. Here, this issue is already labeled, so we know it is a valid issue, and I could probably fix it. But I will scroll down, I will read if it is fixable, if it is reproducible on a particular channel. So I can see somebody commented that it's reproducible on a stable channel. and they have also reproduced on master channel. So if an issue produces on master, then it exists on the top of the Flutter development environment, right? And it has to be fixed on master in order to trickle down to the stable channel. So I can scroll down. I can confirm if somebody has fixed it or not. Somebody filed a PR for this, but they have closed it. So maybe they're working on another PR for this. So I would avoid this. I will look for something else to work on. Then you will see some issues are assigned already. So if somebody is assigned to an issue, they're probably going to be fixing it in the near future. So you can also avoid those issues. And I see another one here. It's assigned P2. It's not really high priority, but important issue to fix. And then it has been verified and somebody already investigating it, you know? So my thing is, my suggestion is that, like, when you're starting, it's important to know where to begin. And when you put effort into investigating an issue, make sure that you're not working on an issue that's already being worked on. And if you find something where you can add value, like here I can say, okay, I can update documentation. It says update or document, so it's not sure if it is a documentation issue or I need to update the widget. So I can read the description that has been provided, and for refresh indicator, I can actually go into source code and see how the source code look like if I want to make changes. So when you're a beginner, you need to understand where the source of this widget is. So let's pick refresh indicator for in this case, and then I'm gonna browse the source from I can browse it from here from the repository, but let's browse it from our IDE. So when we have like fork, we are in the top directory of this fork, right? It's just called Flutter. So when you download Flutter, this is just the top folder, but we won't see refresh indicator here. So we need to go to that place where refresh indicator exists in the source code. So in order to do that, I can browse the folders here. One second. Here. So I can see there is a bin folder, then there is a dev folder, and then let me make it a little bit bigger. And then there is a packages folder. Packages folder. So when I go here, I see all the other packages in the framework side. There's another package called Flutter. Then there is the Flutter tools package. There's Flutter test. And I can see, okay, there's another Flutter package. So let me go inside that. Then I can see there's the lib folder. Then in the lib folder, I see a bunch of classes that are importing other classes. So I can see there is a foundation class, and then there's a gesture one, but wait, there is the material class. So I know we're in the right place. There is material here, and refresh indicator is the material widget, but there's also a source class, source folder, and here I can see that another material folder, and then it has a bunch of widgets. So for fun, I can just type app bar. There's about folder, then there is app bar class and about class. So this is the right place, but how do I open this in the IDE? So first, I'm here on the top level of the Flutter fork, and then I can just type cd packages, cd Flutter. So there are cdf, and then you can see there are a bunch of folders. So another Flutter folder. This is the place we want to be if we want to edit. This is the Flutter package. So Flutter package inside Flutter repository. Here, I will execute Flutter pub get. So it's download bunch of, it's similar to just executing Flutter Doctor. So I just type Flutter pub get. And when it's done, it's initializing the tool because we just forked this repository a few minutes ago. So initializing the tools, and then I can open this repository, open this fork in any development environment like NStudio or VS Code. And I can make those changes if I want to make it a fix, or if I want to make an example change or something. I can do it in my local environment. Then I can create a new branch and push that change. So now it's done. I have a VS short alias to open Flutter source in VS Code. Here we are. So this is Flutter package where my like my assumption is that there will be all the material things, all the widgets in this package. And there are, like, if you open src and then material, there are all kinds of widgets here. So it might look daunting at the beginning because there's everything here. So so I can take something else. Like, I can, instead of looking into all the files, I can just type the file name to search for that file. So I can type refresh, and then I see a refresh dot dot and refresh indicator. I can open this class directly. I don't have to worry about thousands of files in the Flutter indicator, right? And here I see this class has everything related to refresh indicator. This is called refresh indicator. And you can browse this. You can see where the refresh indicator widget is. It's here. And you notice, like, I did not run the example, and then I did not inspect this source. I could inspect this source from the example. But instead of doing that, I opened my fork, my clone, into VS Code directly. So doing this way, instead of running the example, I can also show you that. Instead of running the example, and then when you click, control click, refresh indicator, you can inspect this same location, right? But when you make those changes, you can't see the Flutter Doctor, not Flutter Doctor, Flutter Pub Get is working or not. Here I can do that. Here I can type even this button, and I can see it's working fine. Ignore test private. And here I can see everything is fine. There are no errors. Like, the analyzer is happy. So if I make any changes here, I will know directly. Like, intentionally, you can delete something. Let's just say I delete something, and you can see the tab is red. So I know analyzer is working. So when you're editing the source code, you need to know if the analyzer is fine or not, right? And here I can probably look up this issue that we'll discuss. I forgot where it was. So I can search for that issue again. Okay, yeah, I lost it. I can search for it again. Refresh indicator. This time I did not use the label. I just typed refresh indicator and I found this issue. So I found the issue again, and I described the refresh indicator example and describing some issue. I can read the description. I can read the comment. There's somebody commenting on the issue, and there must be a long discussion, and somebody has added more context. So first, I would get this context. I would understand the nature of the issue, and then I will look up for the source code and try to figure out if something I can fix. I can look into the source code. And if I know I want to make some change and I can fix this issue, I can make that change here in the source code. And then every change should be tested. If it is a bug fix, then I can search for the same file, refresh indicator, but there is another class called refresh indicator test dot dot. So everything that exists in the refresh indicator dot dot is being tested in refresh indicator test dot dot, which is pretty easy to understand. And here you will see all kinds of tests for the refresh indicator. So you would be adding your own test in this class. So you would have a fix in refresh indicator dot dot, and then you would have a test for that fix in this file. And let's say I made this change, I will create a new branch. I will create a new branch in a GitHub GUI or terminal, or if you prefer to use commands. And I will create a new branch and push the change into the repository. And once, before doing this, I also recommend searching for similar fixes for a refresh indicator. So we have searched for the issue. Let's search for a PR. So you will know if you're doing the exact thing that's required to fix a refresh indicator bug. So I would search for a refresh indicator in the PR section this time instead of the issue section. And I can see somebody has an open PR, refresh indicator or spinner. Let's just inspect it quickly. And I will see, you don't have to pay attention to the details, but I want to know if the files are exactly the same I expected. And indeed, you can see there is a refresh indicator dot dot class that they have edited. There is an orange indicator to show that they have modified the class. And then they have also written test in the same class that I suspected. So it kind of confirms what you're doing. And before you make those changes, you will know you're in the right place, like I talked about earlier. And if you want to be inspired, you want to understand what they did, you can read the PR. And I recommend reading PR. I recommend reading PR that have been open, or more importantly, the one that are merged. I can talk about that in a second. So for this, I can just read it. I can see they have added a new constructor here called noSpinner. And then they have also provided us parameters, yada, yada, yada. I can see they have also added onMode change is a new callback. And I can scroll down and I can see they have created a new group in the RefreshIndicator test.dart class. And they have added test for this change. I see some issues here, but when you're beginner, you might not notice it. Like this test class has a line break here, but it has too much space here. So to understand if this is currently open, so it is subject to change. But to understand if these changes are correct, and I want to understand how to format my code when I make those changes, like you could be editing like several lines or adding a lot of new code. So how to style that code for a PR to be like successfully merged? To do that, you can go back. Like I said, you can bookmark this file, contributing.md, come back here. And you have done this setup technically. Like I have done the fork, and I know how to open my fork in my IDE, and then find the changes I want to make. Then here you can come back and understand the style guide. Here in this class, there is a lot of information, and reading this will be quite daunting and time consuming. And there is a lot of information that you might not even understand when you begin working on the Flutter repository. So here, I would recommend just going through the topics, understanding, okay, where what's important and what are the generalization of this. You can just get a summary of this documentation. But you can talk about I can talk about formatting this in a proper way. If somebody has uh, reviewed this PR, there will be more information, because this PR is new, so nobody has commented yet. Like I can see there is a no reviewer. So I want to learn from PR that have been merged in the past, so I can understand if those changes were valid or not. Because if it's been merged, it's definitely valid, right? So how do I do that? So here in the source class, I can see the changes have been made in the past. It's the actual source of this, but I want to see the PR that made some of these changes in this file. So I can go back to the repository, the upstream repository, come back here, and this file, refreshindicator.dart, I can look up for this same file in the Flutter repository. Then I can track commit history for that file. So I can just press T, it's a shortcut to find a file in the repository. Just type refresh indicator. You see the same file that pop up in the IDE. Here I can see RefreshIndicator.dart. It's inside material, it's inside Flutter packages, which is Flutter packages/Flutter. And I can click this file. It's the same source class, but exists in on GitHub. So you can just confirm you're in the right place. Drag container percentage, go back, drag container percentage, we're in the right file. And here I will learn I can learn about the changes that have been made to this source class by other people. So I can learn from their experience. So here I can see it was updated 3 weeks ago. This particular file was modified 3 weeks ago, and I can click history. And you can see there have been modifications done to this class for over the years. So if I see some change that's particular to mine, like for example, if the refresh indicator color is broken, the background color is broken, or the value indicator color is broken, I can look for PR that have modified colors. Like I can see myself here. So I can see if refresh indicator, somebody has fixed a color property for refresh indicator. But it's not there. Just look up something that you might be able to read clearly, right? So I can see, okay, this is the adaptive refresh indicator here. I might be interested in that. I want to see like how they have modified the source class for this. So I can see it adds a adaptive refresh indicator. I can go to the source, the file changes for this PR, and there are a bunch of changes here. And I can see there is only two space. There is no like six space. So this looks consistent with the changes that are merged, right? So if I make some changes and I start a new line, let's just say I go back down and I see some changes here, right? This method, I can see when you start a new line, it has two spaces and it's consistent with other lines. So I can also match that style. So this way, like instead of reading that long documentation, it is helpful. But when you see a merge PR, you can gather these clues that will help you, and it becomes a habit after some point when you submitting PRs back to back. So I can see that it has two spaces. So I will use two spaces for a new line. The reason why I'm talking about, most importantly, is the reason why I'm talking about styling it this way, because Flutter source code does not use dot format. So you have to manually format your code. And unlike your regular app where you can just use dot format or just auto save format, you can't do that with the source code. So in the style guide, I can search for this topic because I want to know the dot format thing, right? So I can search for FMT and it says formatting. So I can say we don't yet use dot FMT. So okay, so I learn a new information and I can reference this document another time. And then another thing, like when you begin, you will notice that some classes and too short, like some lines and too short, like they're only using, not put it in this case, but you can see it doesn't go too long, and there is a limit for this. So the Flutter team has decided to put a limit of 80. So if you search 80 or even line limit, something like that, limit line,
Line
yeah,
lengths.
line length, yes. So if you search for this, you can see there is information. I discovered this after I started contributing, not before, because who has the time to read this long file? So you learn this step by step. And if you make a long change, you can see it should not be more than 80 characters. In some cases, it can be. Uh, so there's that. And then you can also see they have added tests in the refresh indicator class.
I can
And it's
actually
including
also
Cupertino as well.
maybe
Yeah.
quickly here, I give you my thoughts here. Usually, when I contribute, when you have like when you open a file, let's say the indicators that you opened, and you have already Dart format as autosave and stuff. When you make a change and press, then suddenly it changes everything, right?
Yes,
If you
yes,
check the diff in the Git,
yes.
you will see that, oh, you actually changed one line, but then suddenly you have a difference of, I don't know, 100 lines, right? Something
That's
is
a good
wrong.
point. Yeah.
Something is wrong. You should not have, like, if you're changing one line, two line, 10 lines, you should only see those lines. Anything else, it should not be in the Git diff. And those are formatting issues, which is not compatible with this any open source project that you're opening. In this case, we're talking about Flutter for sure. So I think this is also another way of validating the formatting of the file.
Exactly. Yeah. So in such cases, I understand like a lot of developers, like when they're contributing, they're also working with their regular project,
Mhm.
and uh, you will make those changes like without even like intentionally. You will be like, it is natural for me to format this class. So to get out of that habit, like you should be either looking at the option in the settings to not format only when you're contributing. So in VS Code, you can just type dot format, and it does, like, you can also disable format on save. So only when you're making those changes, you should not format. So first disable that,
Mhm.
and then disable auto format. I'm not sure exactly where the file is because I don't have those settings enabled. And then there is also a 80 character limit right here. We were just talking about this. So it's built in the .SDK rules. And there is also a complete way to disable formatter, but I don't do that. So I do recommend either using a different IDE. In the beginning, I did that. In the beginning, I used a separate IDE just to avoid those unintended changes. But you can also do something like profiles. Like in VS Code, they have recently added profiles, so you can create a
Exactly.
separate profile just for contributing, and you don't have to have those changes that are specific to your projects. You can
Exactly.
switch to a new profile just when you're contributing.
Good points.
Yeah.
All right. So
Um,
this was you've been walking us through all of these steps very nicely. That I stopped asking question in the middle of your talk. So you answered almost all of my question. Um, So this was an interesting thought process, let's say, for sending the first PR. I guess the first PR is always like the hardest one. You need to figure out a lot of things. Where should I look in? Oh, it's like thousands of files, lines of codes, formatting, and then even like you pay attention to many things. You send a PR, then you get comments, and not this way a lot of time you're like there's not only the formatting style guide but also like the coding style guide, let's say, like what's the best practice, what's not, and then you do something and then you get a comment, oh, we don't do it this way, we should do it that way. These are all hard in the beginning, but as you said, when you start doing, and sending PRs, you slowly learn. One interesting thing that I like about contribution to open source, in particular right now, Flutter, is you learn a lot about the best practices because, like, this project, it's supposed to be solid and perfect, right? I'm not saying necessarily everyone should agree 100% with the way that they're working, but as we are seeing Flutter right now as it is pretty solid, pretty nice. So then you learn through this, process of sending PR, getting comments, reviewing files. Oh, why they have created such a file? Why they have created such a structure? Then you realize more and more, and you learn more and more, which is beautiful, I guess. And you now walked us through this project very nicely. And as you mentioned right now, so you walked us through the framework, which probably most people will spend more time on that. Um, is there anything specifically? It's interesting. We are almost around 50 minutes recording this show, and I did not notice that. So, is there anything that you want to right now mention about the contribution to this repository that's going to be very helpful for those who are going to start or want to start, contributing to Flutter?
I'm so glad you brought that up. I do want to emphasize that there is a lot of information. There is a lot of documentation. There are so many files, but when you're beginning, you have to cut everything out. You only focus on what necessary. And like you mentioned earlier, like avoid making those unintended changes. Only make changes that are necessary for the PR to land. And even if you don't know, like if the changes are correct, you can look up other PRs and learn more. But I want to emphasize that when you're starting, you don't have to know how, like for example, refresh indicator. You don't have to know how refresh indicator works or app bar works. You don't have to know all the details of those widgets. You don't have to be an expert to fix bugs for those issues for those widgets, you know. And you can just start small, look up what you only care about. And when you're beginning, you need to be able to be excited about the area you want to work on. Like if you're really excited about material, you like material widgets, you use material widgets in your project, and you might use navigation bar, for example, and you will see, okay, it's not doesn't have a correct label. So that's one of motivation you have to look up for the navigation bar source code, find the label color, label style color, and you don't worry about the entire framework. You don't have to be an expert. You only care about fixing something. You only care about some particular widget and some parameter, some aspect of that widget, and you don't have to know anything else. And when you're testing, it applies the same logic. I would only test the label. I would don't care about testing anything else. And if that particular widget does not have label style test, you can look for other source classes that have something that's testing label or test, um, and you can just simply reuse that code in your fix. So I can give you one example. When you're starting, let's just say I'm looking to add, I'm looking to fix something, and I have fixed it, but I don't know where to begin testing it. So first, if you're fixing an issue for a particular widget, you look up uh, tests for this class, right? And you look up tests for this particular widget. But if that particular fix, let's just say label style or something, I don't know how to test it. I can look up for label and see there are labels here. And then I can look up text style. You can find a lot of information just by searching the keywords for this particular thing. Here, like it says icon style, and it's getting, it's a nice way to get icon color. You can't directly get icon color. So just this 5 lines, I have used these 5 lines several times in tens of PRs. So if I want to test icon style or label style, I will look up the keyword for that test in other classes. I'm not even thinking about app bar here. I'm only thinking about icon or label. And I searched it. I was like, oh, okay, so this returns icon style, and it's being used several times in this class, and then it's being used in other classes as well. So this one method is going to be reusable and helpful in many of the future, like any of the future PRs that you might be working on, and you want to test color of label style or icon style. In this case, what it's doing, when I started in the beginning, it was a little bit weird for me. Like I have icon widget, I want to test the icon color, but it's getting rich text. Then it's finding descendant of that icon as a rich text type, and it's getting the style for that. And icon style, look in the same class. Oh, 1 second. Icon style. We are testing leading icon color, action icon color, and this would be reusable everywhere you fix this type of bug. And when you're developing an app or you're working on an app, you can use the same code to test your own icons in your own production app. So you will make sure that the user has correct icon style and color. And doing this way, like figuring out what are the common behaviors, common tests, common use cases, it's going to be helpful to work on 1 PR or 10 PRs. It doesn't matter, because you know that information now, and you can reuse that information. You can use that knowledge to work on multiple PR. That's how it'll motivate you, because when you're good at something, it'll motivate you to work on it more. So you won't give up halfway, and you don't have to write a bug fix to become like one of the top contributors. You don't have to do that. I can show you how. Like if you open Flutter repository and you can browse top contributors on the right, you can see, and I've shared this with other people, and they have been like surprised, like really? And I said, yeah, it's true. And here you can see the top 100 contributors from 2014, and here the number one is a bot. But if you scroll down, all the way down, you go to 100th position, they have 32 commits. And you can make 32 commits without fixing a bug. You can make 33, so you can rank 97, right? But how do I make 33 commits without fixing a bug? There are hundreds of changes that you can make that are not even bug fixes. So I would start by fixing some documentation, because it's one of the easiest way to get started. But you don't have to be expert in the code, but you just explain something better. You add some context to the documentation. And then Flutter team has, like in the last couple of years, Flutter team has been testing examples as well. So if you go to examples, API, there is a test folder for all the examples. And turns out like some examples don't have text. So you can look up example document, example issues, missing test, or something like misunderstood. So in this case, let's search missing tests. So I will find something, hopefully, missing test. So you can see there's a lot of noise here. So we can cut it down to just API docs. Yeah. So here you can see like there are some documentation issues that are been labeled P2. And here I can see some have like some crash bugs, some have something else, right? And there's this one issue, the first one I just saw. So there is a command in integration test readme not working. So in the integration readme, the command is not working. So you can fix this command in the readme documentation, and that's your PR. That's your PR. That's your first PR, let's just say. And if you look up for missing test, I want to find this issue. There's one issue somebody in the Flutter team has filed. Let me quickly look it up. It's filed by Greg Spencer. If you filter it, you can definitely do that. Missing test. It didn't show up in the filter for some reason. So it says many API examples are missing test. So this particular issue is tracking all the missing tests for all the API examples in the framework. And there is a huge list. It has probably like, I don't know how many are these files. It's a big list. And I don't even have to fix like all the examples. I could just go and fix maybe a couple of them, or like 5-10 of them, and submit a PR. Or like you should be like thinking about the actual example test in one PR. So for example, I can just go and fix Cupertino text field test, and I can file one PR if I want. But if it is too small, I could probably fix 4 example test, file one PR, and in the description say that I'm fixing missing tests for Cupertino text field and app bar and theme extension. So you can also do that. And this particular issue, I highly recommend for beginners. If you want to brush up your testing skills and you want to brush up your Flutter knowledge, because when you go through this source code, when you go to this list of missing tests, you will figure out there are some widgets that I have never used in my app, and there are some widgets that have like I could be benefiting from, like selectable region. There is a selectable container, and then there is a stepper widget. I don't really use it, but I would love to learn more. And the example already exists. Okay, like these are only missing tests, so I can run the example and test it quickly. And then there are snack bar and everything. So how do I write tests for this? Okay, I know there are missing tests. So let me quickly show you. Like go to existing tests and see how they are returned. Go to API example, test, and in this case, let's just say in material again, and then action chip. There is a test, and I have added this test. So you can see the test is few lines. It's taking the example from the source class, and then I'm just checking if it is finding the widget or not. And when I press the button, if it is finding the icon or not. And when I press the action button again, action chip again, I have a new icon. So it just requires like few lines, and there is a fix. So if I'm writing tests for similar thing, I can just simply be inspired from this, or just copy this and modify it. And when you do this, you will be adding missing tests, adding value to the overall ecosystem. And
And you
when you
can
do
get
that,
to the top 100 contributors in Flutter repository, because like one test is like 20, I don't know, like a couple of commits, and then easily get to the top 100, right? So it's interesting.
yes, exactly. Every PR is one commit. So one is merge. You can see like when you open the repository, you can commits here. You can see the track. There are 37,000 commits. So if you scroll down, you can see there is this is one commit. When you open this PR, it's modifying 3 files,
Yeah.
but at the bottom, when it's merged, it's this is one commit,
Yeah.
and you can submit several PRs, and you're not only like learning from this experience, you will be gaining uh, new knowledge, new information that you didn't have before, and you will know those widgets a lot better because you have like personally looked into them and try to test them by writing code, not just by running example and then tapping a button.
Exactly. I mean, Todd, this is fantastic. We can go hours and hours maybe talking to details of this repository. I think I would like to invite you to another show and then going a bit deeper. This time we just touched the surface, folders,
Yeah.
maybe simple things to get us started. But next time, maybe we can go a bit deeper and maybe we can even pick one issue together and try to send a PR like in this show and see how really it works, like setting up our environment from beginning and try to format correctly and and try to make sure we're following all the steps. Maybe next time we can go through Flutter Engine as well and explain a bit how it really works, and also other packages like Toolkit and others that already exist in the repository. So there are a lot that I'm pretty sure we can talk about, and I appreciate if you can join us in another show and then walk us through in another step, like a bit more advanced, really sending a PR and finishing something from beginning to the end, let's say. And for the last word of this show, do you want to just say any tips, tricks, anything that you would like to share with audiences for this video?
I would only say that like don't feel daunted, don't feel overwhelmed, and just keep your motivation and work on something that you really love, and and know that you will benefit from exploring, being curious. And a lot of time when I'm working on something, I am curious, and so be curious, and you will never know what you will discover, and you will gain a lot of insight just being curious about whatever repository you want to contribute to. It could be Flutter packages, it could be Flutter community, it could be anything. There are all kinds of like mono repositories where you have a bunch of these similar to Flutter repository. There are a bunch of other repositories that have these complexities, and if you're interested, just go and see what others are doing, because there are so many active contributors that do tremendous work that also inspire me. Even though I work on this on a daily basis, I still learn something every day.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Taha, once more for coming to this show and sharing your knowledge and passion with us. And I hope to see you next time also in the show and going much deeper. And I will actually put all the links, Taha's contact, Twitter, and everything in the description of this show, wherever you see or listen to this. And hopefully you can get in touch with Taha directly as well. Thank you very much, Taha. And thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for watching this video. See you next time.